and talk a little bit more about Final Fantasy 15. And I'm going to bridle myself somewhat on this one, but only somewhat. Um, so with Final Fantasy 15, um, we kind of covered this the last time that we talked about it, but it has had a uh, over a decades long development cycle. It has moved through revisions upon revisions. For the longest time, it just seemed like Square Enix didn't know what they wanted this game to be. For the longest time, it was going to be like this dark, gritty, almost gothic-looking Kingdom Hearts-inspired game. Just looking at the earlier trailers, then it was going to have a tie-in to Final Fantasy 13, then it wasn't going to have a tie-in to Final Fantasy 13. But anyway, this game has been changed so many times. And recently, in an interview with the director, his name is Hajime Tabata. He says that the development team came down with something called Final Fantasy disease. Now, how he sums that up as, he basically is calling the backlash during all of this reorganization that took place over the years. That's what he's calling Final Fantasy disease. Let me quote him here. He said, "It wasn't only from inside the team, but outside as well. The reason was that if my way of doing it ended up working, there are those whose circumstances will worsen." Now, I'm assuming that's a literal translation to me, but just kind of reading in the lines, it kind of sounds to me like this guy came in as a new director. He changed the vision for the game. A lot of people already working on the game didn't care for the new direction he wanted to move in. And basically, people were still trying to incorporate too much of the old Final Fantasy. He says further, it refers to people within the company who can't imagine anything other than their own view of Final Fantasy. He also said, because of that, there was a time I told off the team, saying, "We're not special, wake up." Yet I realized that when Final Fantasy 15 news was made public, this wasn't only inside the company. Everyone has Final Fantasy disease. Everyone who's basically a fan of Final Fantasy is in his opinion, this is how I'm reading it. In his opinion, we are tainting the new direction that they want Final Fantasy to move in, because we're gamers. We like franchises to still be recognizable in their franchise. We kind of don't like it when you pull a bionic commando on us and you make this game that just doesn't fit with the other games that have come out before it. There's a term for that. It's called alienation. It's where you basically alienate the fans. You tell the fans by producing this game that you basically have no interest in pleasing them. You're only interested in bringing in new people, and you might have a nod here or there. You may have an Easter egg or two. That's kind of how I'm taking his meaning. What do you think about what he said?
I think there is also a very good line in between innovation versus alienation. I think something that reflects innovation from a game, let's say like 30 years ago, I think, to now would be Doom, the original Doom, and then the new Doom that was released recently. From what I've seen, just visually from the old Doom, because I wasn't alive back then, uh, basically it was like a corridor, maybe not so much a corridor, but first-person shooter. You go into rooms, you go into hallways. Sometimes there's open spaces, and you shoot things. You get new guns. There's a health bar, an armor bar, and it has your ammo. And you have all these weapons that you can choose from. The graphics back then were pretty good. Nowadays, if you were to do something like that in the same way, you'd have to, make it pleasing to the eye for newer gamers. And of course, you want to get new people into your game, but you also want to satisfy the fans of the original Doom. So the new Doom came out. Honestly, I think that they did a pretty good job of just of innovating it, turning it from the way that it plays and the way that it looks like just an amazingly better version of the original. You're still on Mars. You're still fighting hellish demons with bionic enhancements. You still have all of your awesome weapons: the chainsaw, the pump-action shotgun, that gun that has a very wonderful three-letter gun. This is a big one. You know what I'm talking about. But like it did all these things. It brought back all the classic Doom weapons. It made them so much better looking, and it brought back all the enemies, the imps, the weird floating dudes with the eye. It brought back all the classic things that everyone liked about the original series, but it made it look so much better. It made it play so much smoother, and like right now, I feel like that's one of the best examples of innovation for games now. If you guys haven't played Doom, I recommend playing it. I've been watching a couple of friends play it, and I've also been watching a couple of YouTubers play it. It looks like a great game. Such a pretty. It's weird to say that it looks pretty when it's about demons
On Mars.
slaughtering everyone on Mars, yeah. But it really does look like a great game. But yeah, that's my opinion on innovation and alienation.
And I'm glad you brought up Doom because that's a perfect example of alienation versus innovation. Um, Back when Doom 3 launched about 10 years ago, a little bit, 2005, I want to say, um, we hadn't had a Doom game in over a decade. And you had Doom 1, Doom 2, which they basically played the same. Doom 3 comes out, and of course you have all of these gameplay innovations that have come out since Doom 2. And what did they do? They went ahead and they implemented those changes because why not? It's a first-person shooter, and we need to make a game by first-person shooter, those modern conventions, modern for the time. So they did things like you now have to reload your gun. You now have a difference between walking and sprinting. And by the way, the game's going to be very, very dark. So dark that you need to have a flashlight. And they basically went from a shoot 'em up first person shooter, a very action oriented shooter game, and wanted to make it into a survival horror with Doom 3. This Doom comes out. It's basically a reboot. And they went back to the original Doom mechanics that are all of a sudden new again. There's no difference between running and walking. You are always running. You are always moving very, very fast. I don't even think you don't recover health like you do in first-person shooters where, you just take some cover and magically your health comes back within a few seconds. You actually have to either get health pickups or you do those new melee glory kills and get health that way. You also don't have to reload your weapon. You just shoot your weapon until you run out of ammo or you switch guns. It's so it's so fascinating that they've actually gone back to the old mechanics. And this is what I feel like that they're doing with Final Fantasy 15. We have cars. They're even talking about like the car is kind of a character itself. The car is no replacement for an airship or a chocobo. So far, I've only seen basically the battle system looks interesting, and the summons look incredible. But I just don't agree with this direction that they're moving in. Um, and I really think this director, if he's saying what I think he's saying, I think it's completely the wrong view to be taking about a series that has been supported by the fans for what, nearly 30 years now.